Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Morning Shots, and I have Chris Wyatt joining me all the way from Pennsylvania, USA. He's come to Quebec. Hey, Chris, how's your journey here?
I'm confused. I thought this was Nelson Mandela Bay.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know the story of why they actually called it Gqeberha?
Well, I know it's a Khoi son or a Khoi name.
Yeah, do you know the actual story? Like,
I didn't.
few people actually know what their actual real story is. So there was a queen called Queen Quebeca,
Yeah.
and the ANC wanted to get her to side with them in terms of the elections. You know, like they do. They go like a lot of the
Buying votes.
yeah, they always go to all like the royal families and whoever they are, and they're like, if you vote for us, we'll do all these crazy things for you. I don't know, get you a new BMW. You see that quite a lot in the Eastern Cape as well. Anyway, they named city after her. And then
Cool
she
as that.
died. And then she promptly died from reasons. And I'm sure if anybody is actually around PE or Nelson Mandela Bay, you'll notice that the signage for Quebeca never actually became that important an issue which is dead. So,
It was just to buy her off, so they haven't followed through.
well, I mean, unfortunately, it was officially renamed to Quebeca.
Yeah, but you don't see signs anywhere that say that.
No, you would be very hard pressed to drive around and actually find the signs.
It's like Schwane. You don't find signs anywhere that say Schwane except a couple on the highway, but nothing in town.
Yeah, at least you got a couple on the highway. What's really interesting here is they actually buy new municipal vehicles and they're all branded as Port Elizabeth.
I gotta love it. Gotta love it. But to answer your question directly, going pretty well. It's typical trip where South Africans are friendly and welcoming and engaging. And so I hit 60 today, by the way. So that's 60 people that have come up to me in the street that I don't know. That happened to me in the hotel as I was walking out this morning, and then it happened again a little bit after that. Just people I don't know that know me from the broadcasting. You know how people come up to you. So I keep track of that now because it's kind of like a game. And 52 in the Western Cape, and then a few in KZN, and now a few here. So interesting.
Must be the beard, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a trademark. Some of the ladies want me to shave it. They think it makes me look old. A lot of ladies want me to keep it. A lot of folks like me to keep it. Whenever I do polls, it's like 3-1 keep it. Although the last one was a little split because I gave a third question. I said, keep it, cut it off, or trim it. And 43% of those who responded, which was about 800 people, said trim it. So I don't know. It's like I'm not a fan of the beard. It's become a trademark though. I'm instantly recognizable all over the place. I mean, even Nota Bloy is checking me out.
Yeah, I saw that you were having comments on your YouTube page from him. So
Yeah, he's worried about my safety. He's very kind of him to be concerned. I appreciate it.
yeah, I mean, a lot of that worry of his safety comes from him directly, right? Because he's a bit of a nut job. So
Yeah, I hear that, but anyway, we don't worry about
you know,
that too
he
much.
says that white people are like Neanderthals and stuff. Huh?
Well, he also said that white women can't bear children, which begs the question: how did white Europeans go from about 10,000, a few thousand years ago, to 1.2 billion people on the planet today if they can't bear children? But must have been magic incubators.
I think that's fake news.
I think so too.
I've never seen a pregnant white woman.
No,
Never. He might be right.
possibly.
I mean,
Right,
I've got 4 in the office here, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting, this trip. Very warmly greeted by folks all over the place. I do the meet and greets. You came to the one last night. Appreciate you being there. That was the second largest one. We had, given the people coming in and out, that because I'd leave early and people came late. It's over 90 people. There are 81 reservations. Over 90 people showed up. And I don't think a lot of people realized we even had it last night. So that was pretty amazing. The biggest one was in Strunt, 150 people. That's overwhelming something. I'm kind of well known in Pretoria, so I'm almost afraid to do a meet and greet in Pretoria. It might be huge. Of course, nobody can show up too. I mean, I've done meet and greets where nobody showed up. Did one at your bar, and the only one showed up was you. I think it was just a bad timing. It was during the day that time.
yeah, I mean, if it's during the day when everybody's at work,
Yeah.
then the time's always difficult. I think, so you did a meet and greet yesterday at Ronaldo's place, which is the tapas bar in Walmer.
Yeah, it was quite
A
nice.
lot of people know the location anyway.
Yeah, that's true. The challenge though becomes with South Africa, of course, with safety and driving at night. In some towns like in Gauteng, people spiking the roads, and throwing bricks.
We don't generally tend to get that in Quebec.
Yeah, but they do in Gauteng. So the challenge becomes scheduling these things so that people don't have to drive back at night, So I've done some during the day. Those have been popular. But if you do it during the day, people complain, why are you doing it during the day? If you do it in the evening, people complain, why are you doing it in the evening? Because we have to drive home. So you can't win. So I try to do a mix of them, and they're relatively close. Joburg, Pretoria will be easy because I'll do one in Northcliffe. I'll do one in Four Ways. So that's down southwest at the northeast corner. So you box Joburg in, and then I'll do them in Pretoria as well. So that's relatively easy. So yeah, and then I'll be in Uppington, but I'm not organizing that one. The folks up there are organizing that one.
So what's your view of South Africa this time you've come?
It's interesting because for the past 3 years, every time I come, I can see actual degradation in infrastructure and just shabbiness of places. Durban, I nicknamed Dirtbin a few years ago because it's a disgrace from what it was. I go there 10, 15 years ago. It was a completely different city. It's just a mess now. That said, there's still a lot that functions there, so it's kind of weird. But I do see the decline in the infrastructure and in the appearance of things each time I come. This time I haven't seen it so much. Even in Durban, it kind of looked almost the same as the last time I was here, which is odd. But what I have noticed is something very, very obvious: a great deal of tension amongst South Africans, mostly amongst white South Africans, but not exclusively. Usually people talk about things, they complain about things, but there's a palpable sense of tension in the Western Cape. I was shocked. I didn't expect to see this in the Western Cape. I figured, Western Cape wouldn't be an issue. But, when a lady comes to my meet and greet and tells me that a couple of days ago she had her infant and she's walking out to the parking lot, gets accosted by someone saying, "Why are you here? Get the fuck out and go to America. Give me the keys to your car." In broad daylight, at a Checkers or a Pick and Pay. I'm like, that's not normal behavior. It's a small number of people doing it, but they're being quite bold about it, and they're doing it in places you never expect. So that's a little bit concerning. And I attribute that to two things. Trump's announcement of the refugee program is having some kickback on minorities here, in my view, some minorities. But the other piece is the expropriation without compensation law has given people carte blanche to act like jerks or fools. And we've seen that in Seshego, where they've grabbed land and divided it up amongst themselves. And down here by East London, they did the same thing, and also Northwest Province. So
I did a video on that, yeah.
did you? So I think those two things are having it from the outside. It's always me.
I
and
actually
outside.
I got all the information from Ian Cameron. I did a
Okay.
video on it. He
The
sent me
East London one or Seshego?
the East London one.
Okay.
He sent me a lot of information. He sent me
Okay.
pictures and various
Well, that's kind of
clips.
handy. Yeah.
And the
I don't
reason-
hear from him much anymore since he became an MP.
and so the actual reason that I got a lot of that stuff from Ian Cameron was because the people that were dividing the land were actually police.
That's what I'd heard, but I couldn't get any.
Was police and local law enforcement.
I couldn't get confirmation.
Some of the individuals were working for the prison services, so they were correctional facility services. And he had all the video. He had all the cars. But it's like, who do you call to assist you when it's the police
doing it?
Doing it, like who do you call? You call the municipal law enforcement. Well, they're doing it too. You got the prison guy. They're doing it. So there was like whole streets of cars of like law enforcement cars basically selling these properties.
I did see images that were posted. I don't know if it was Ian or I forget who it was, of police cars sitting there on the side of the road when this happened. But from that photo, without further information, I don't know if they're responding to it or they're part.
So the allegation, can't prove this. Obviously, I only had the information supplied to me. Allegation was that it was actual police, and so he had actually told the police to do something about it, but it was the police doing it. So, what do you do? And
I guess you get the police to police.
you get the police. Yeah, exactly. And from recollection, again, I'm going to say it's allegation, because remember, we have to say allegation when it's not proven. Proven means that it hasn't gone through the courts and the judge said it's proven. So allegation is that he did get somebody in the police to review the police.
Yeah.
And so it has been escalated to a more senior branch of the police to review the police.
But I mean, stuff like that is very disconcerting. That's happening. Now, we hear politicians in South Africa say, they always, and the media does this too, but the politicians, they try to rubbish things. Well, there are no mass confiscation of land. I'm sorry. Why did you put the word mass in there, or widespread? Why that's just like in America, there was no widespread fraud in the 2020 election. Well, there was events going on, may not have been widespread, but it did affect places. And there is land being taken by people who are illegally doing it, who are occupying.
Okay, but then that will actually be the government's argument. And look, I'm not saying I agree with it, but obviously, for those of you who don't know, I used to work in government. I actually used to report to a minister in the UK. And I used to be in charge of comms. I was the guy that rolled out to the public to talk rubbish to the public when they want to smooth stuff over. So I have a very good understanding as to how this works.
Mhm.
But they will say that the actual confiscations of land that's occurring is illegal.
But they're taking
Confiscation.
no action to stop it.
But they're taking no action. Okay, we understand that. But they will say it's not state sanctioned because there's no law signed by any minister, which in this instance would be Dean McPherson. And I've heard from Dean directly, and Dean says, I've never signed an expropriation bill, and he's the one that has to sign it. So as far as like the EFF will say, the act is ineffective because it's been signed and nobody's doing anything.
Yeah, the problem with that, of course, though, is that that's not the reality. The reality is that people's land is being stolen, and that's what Trump is reacting to.
And they will say that it's illegal and it's theft of land. But then the natural response to anybody with a brain cell would be like, okay, your response is that there's no wholesale confiscation of land, and there isn't.
True.
It's a fact. There's no wholesale
Yep,
confiscation.
never claimed, just like there's no white genocide.
There's no state confiscation of land at this juncture,
Correct.
but there is illegal theft of land occurring right now, of which the state is doing nothing about.
And the contrast I make with that, Byron, is that historically, the ANC government, when they were majority government, when land has been taken illegally, oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes they will evict those people or they'll go to court to have that done. And we know famously in the Gqeberha area, they hire the Red Ants to do this. And those guys are
The red ants are getting their legs chopped off at the knees at the moment. They're being stopped from doing a lot of things. They've lost a lot of government contracts because there appears to be very little appetite from the government itself to stop illegal occupation of land.
And de facto, that means stolen land confiscations, which is tacitly endorsed by the government.
And again, if I put my minister hat on, like my former job, I'd say, if I wanted to deny it, I'd say, well, there's no confiscation of land. There's no wholesale confiscation of land.
And that's cool. And if you're a minister, you've just lost your SWIFT banking privileges and your travel privileges.
You know what I mean? So like, I know what they're doing. Like, I know full well what they're doing. And I also know that that's why that instance in the Eastern Cape became so important, because it was like, yes, Dean hasn't signed off on this. Yes, it's not state-sanctioned expropriation, 100%. But it kind of is, because it's involving members of the state. Now, as a lawyer, I'm acutely aware of this amazing thing that we have called the principle of agency.
Mhm.
And the principle of agency is if I can hold myself out to be a representative of an entity, if in the process of me holding myself out to be a representative, you as a member of the public could rely on that because of a rationality, there's something that allows you to think that, then you are deemed to be acting as a representative of the entity to which you represent. Very wordy, lawyers speak, but
in plain English.
In plain English, what it means is, if I tell you, if I'm dressed as a police officer,
Mhm.
and if I'm telling you as a police officer, I'm selling you land, and it's state sanctioned, even if I'm acting what we would call ultra virus outside of the scope of my job, or what the English like to call a frolic of my own, you outside of your normal confines of your
Correct.
job, I can still, the public are seeing me in my uniform.
As
my
a
police
representative
uniform.
of the state.
They will see me as a representative of the state, and underneath the principle of agency, de facto, I am
The
a
state.
representative of the state, even though
You're
I'm not
acting.
officially, I'm acting ultra virus, right? I'm acting outside of the scope of my job.
No, I get that. In the military, that's why we have to be very careful about what we do in uniform. That's why we are prohibited from wearing uniforms at many events. Marines in the U.S. Marine Corps can't even wear the uniform off base.
Mm.
The Army allows that to and from work. I mean, because it's impractical to be taking the uniform out of my place. Marines are very strict on that. You cannot wear your Marine uniform off unless it's an event, a sanctioned event. But you can't drive home in uniform. You won't see Marines drive home in uniform. They change. Army, Navy, Air Force, we do it, but you can't like go. You can stop at a shopping mall to grab something quick, but you can't spend 2 or 3 hours in the mall. That's inappropriate use of the uniform. It gives the impression the military is for something or against something, so you can't do it.
Yeah, and so that's why you would then say, okay, Mr. Minister, if I, as I say, put my minister hats on, I say, I want to avoid responsibility. I say, there's no wholesale confiscation of land. That's what they're saying. So that now you can interpret full well the rationality behind what they're doing. But then you have to go, okay, now there's the idea of the electoral mandate, the ANC's electoral mandate, where it goes to confiscate land. But I've got members acting as representatives under the principle of agency of the state doing illegal activities whilst not acting underneath the purview of the state. But let's be honest, I mean, these people were buying a piece of land for 50K, 50,000 Rand, not a lot of money for pieces of land. But as far as they were concerned, they were interacting with an agent of the state. This was a police officer. So
they're being defrauded by someone fraudulently giving the impression that they're from the state.
But they were from the state because they worked for the state, even though they were doing it illegally. So as the state now, you've actually got a double duty. You've got to sanction this guy with the full might of the force, make everybody completely aware that the only way to actually get the land is to go through a certain process, none of which has been done. In which case, de facto, using my lawyer speak again, it's exactly what you would say. And that is, or even what Trump would say. It looks like land confiscation is occurring because
it is.
You're allowing it to occur whilst doing nothing about it.
Right. You're tacitly endorsing it.
100%.
Yep. I mean, and so let's go back to the other topic there for a second there.
By the way, not to cut you off, that's exactly how land confiscation occurred in Zimbabwe. Just to be clear.
Oh, I'm a subject matter expert on that. I've been covering that for the whole time. It's unfortunate. And the thing about the Zimbabwe situation, it was all lies. So first off, the argument was that the land was stolen by the settler colonies. Well, yeah, you can make that argument, but the point is that from 1979, the Electoral Agreement, when Rhodesia, Zimbabwe became, because they changed the name briefly, became Zimbabwe in 1980, from that time on, every single sale of land had to be approved by Mugabe's government, first as prime minister, then as president. And 42% of all commercial farmland changed hands at least once from 1980 to 2000 when the farm invasions began. So that means that if the government of Zimbabwe had been serious about getting land for Black Zimbabweans and war veterans, they could have acquired 42%. When you put these facts out to ZNPF, the argument always is, well, we didn't have the money. That's a lie. The British government gave Zimbabwe 63 million pounds from 1980 to about 1992, when John Major said, nope, that's it. The money's being spent to give farms to Mugabe and Chiwenga and Sharon Piri. We're not going to do this anymore. So they stopped. So they had a chance to get the land. And then the thing of this also, as I mentioned, is that 38% of the people identified as commercial farmers in the year 2000 have become commercial farmers after Zimbabwean independence under a majority Black rule government with the government's consent.
And interestingly enough, we have very similar-ish type stats in South Africa if you take into account people that have bought farms legitimately since the end of 1994, the end of apartheid.
Exactly.
But that's immaterial. However, there's actually something that I want to draw reference to. And for those of you who don't know, there's some articles on Substack. Go read them if you want. And I've written quite a lot about this in the last week. And I'm going to tell you a story and then actually speak to you about it. But you know the story there's an old story in the book of Kings in the Bible, which refers to Solomon. So Solomon was approached by two women who basically are arguing over a baby. And Solomon says, okay, cut the child in half and give half to each mother. And the one says, no, you can't do that. You can't harm the baby. Give it to her. I'd rather not do it. And the other mother says, no, cut her in half. I'd rather that neither of us have the child than have to lose it to her. And so Solomon gives it to the woman that doesn't want to kill the child. Abbreviated story. And why this becomes important is because in the last week, we had, in Israel, they had Independence Day, which has been marked by fires, because I don't know if you've been keeping up with this. I know you've been traveling to South Africa, and I've written quite a lot. There's a lot of video footage on my Substack, so go read it. And what they were doing is the Palestinians went into Israel. Now, Israel is actually having a dry period, like a really dry period. I mean, it's a desert. And I got to be honest, that's one of the things, anecdotally, I always struggle with in the Bible, right? It's like the land of milk and honey. It's like a paradise.
It's a desert.
A freaking desert. Like, I don't know why anybody's arguing over it.
I live there. It's a freaking desert.
It's not the greatest place on the planet. And I probably shouldn't say that, but it's like, anyway.
Topographically.
Topographically. Cool. So, because it's been quite dry, some Palestinian protesters are basically, the Free Palestine types that have come from Palestine I say Palestine. There's no such place.
It's Judea they're coming from.
There's no such place as Palestine. They've come from Gaza, basically.
From
So
Gaza, okay.
so they've come from Gaza and they've tried to set fire to Israel, and they've had these mass fires everywhere. Like the half of Israel's had to be under lockdown. I say lockdown, it's just been an emergency situation. They've been trying to control these fires for a while, and it was actually a really big disaster. And in the typical usual fashion, all the pro free Palestine people were like, well, if we can't have Israel, no one can have it, burn the Jews out. And so, one of the things that you'll know is that a lot of the current Jewish government has really struggled to make Israel itself green and arid again. They've had to do forms of reforestation, and it's tough when you're living in a desert and you're trying to turn it into
The land of milk and honey.
the land of milk and honey, because it doesn't naturally lend to that. And so they've gone and they burned down quite a lot of like olive trees and stuff in order to cause these fires. Anyway, this has led a lot of people to ask the simple question, the story of Solomon. If you love this land so much, why are you setting fire to it? Like, why are you destroying the land? Is it a situation that you hate the people more than you love the land? And is it, and if you hate the people more than you love the land, what's your claim to the land in the first place? Like, are you the right person then to be given the land to? Because it's the story of Solomon and the two women, right? And so we could very logically make this argument now in South Africa, because I'm sure you will recall there was this time not that long ago, Julius was at a rally and he said, what we must do is we must burn the farmers out. And then there was the fires in the Free States. That
was at Senegal. That Senegal too, I call it, when they the first time they flipped over the bakkie and then the police drove a buffalo into the courtroom.
Yeah.
The next one where all these people went, that's when he got up on the stage and he sang. And they made sure they switched to English so we all understood, burn the boar out. 94,000 hectares of farmland in the Free State.
The Free State went up
and the Northern Cape went up in flames. One guy was horrifically burned, nearly died. Lots of homes of farm managers destroyed.
Some of them very old too. They were like 200-year-olds. Shed loads of livestock, man. Like livestock
and wildlife.
everywhere.
And wildlife, yes.
Dead.
And no consequence, no repercussions.
Well, they said it was just, a random climate change event, which incidentally, by the way, is actually exactly what now happened in Israel. When the fires went up, they said climate change. And because it was so dry, because of climate change, that it caught on fire. Problem is that Israel actually has quite a lot of cameras everywhere because of the threats of constant terrorist attacks.
So they've got all these arsonists on camera.
They've got tons of them on. And so again, if you want to see some of the video footage, go to my Substack. I've actually got some of it on there.
But Byron, I mean, we can't believe that. I mean, after all, didn't Hamas also live stream their horrific murder, torture, rape, and all
which
that?
I'm sure didn't happen. It was a false flag. It was a false flag by the Israelis.
That's what I'm getting at. So, I mean, we can't believe that as it unfolded in real time, and I saw that stuff on social media as it unfolded, that was just all, it was a Hollywood movie.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if it was James Cameron movie.
Well, pretty shitty James Cameron movie. And it's funny because Douglas Murray in his recent book actually said he went to a lot of the homes and actually saw the aftermath.
Yeah.
And he says he thought it was horrific. He said he actually saw it with his own 2 eyes. And he's now flown over to the US on his book tour, and he's getting lambasted everywhere with everybody going, okay, well, Douglas, you're lying. Can never happen. He's like, I thought you were saying with my own 2 eyes. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, this really happened. But it's curious because, and this is where I'm going with all this, I've noticed something. And that is some of these pro-Hamas type people and these pro-Palestinian people, their argument is that the Jews in Israel aren't really Jews. They're actually European. And the European colonizers, that's actually what they're saying. And that's why, they're saying it's to colonize a settler state, because they're all colonizers. They're all from Europe. They're all white Europeans. And I've seen quite a lot of the allegations now that they should F off and go back to Europe. Now, hold that thought for 1 second, because, and I'll do a video about this next week, folks, so enjoy. There was a protest yesterday in London. I don't know if you know about this.
No, I missed that.
And do you know what it was?
No.
It was a people of color protest. And it was telling, in London, colonizers to get out of England.
What colonizers?
Well, the English.
By whom? The Celts?
Well, you see, the problem is London now is majority
Not European.
not European. And
So
so,
is Leicester, and I believe Manchester is close to
and
it as well.
Birmingham,
Birmingham, yep.
Manchester's going that way.
Yeah, it's close, yeah.
Yeah.
When I went to Edgbaston to watch the cricket, the one-day internationals, the World
Mhm.
Cup a couple years ago when I was still in the Army, I went to a New Zealand-Pakistan game. I was about the only person rooting for New Zealand.
And why that becomes very interesting is that because they know a majority in London of ethnic diversity, the local native is no longer that, and they all come from territories that call white people settlers and colonizers, and they all are used to telling them therefore from go back to wherever they came from, even though they are
Where they came from.
where they came from. And so they were now walking through the streets of London telling them to F off and get out of colonizers out of England.
No, I've seen this in Copenhagen too. You see these folks from that part of the world walking around telling the Danes, hey, this is ours. You'll be gone in 50 years. We have 5 kids. You have 1 or 2. Just, it's coming.
Thing is that it's true.
Of course it's true. It's been going on in Germany for 2 decades, 3 decades now.
And they're already seeing the fruits of it. And aren't they having such a great time about it? But
Yeah.
it's very curious that the reason I mention this is because obviously now I'm giving you 2 examples, right? So the Israelis have to, and many of these people are like 3rd, 4th, 5th generation Israeli. They've lived there for a long time. Many of them went to Israel in the first place because they were Jewish and they were told to F off and get out of Europe.
Go back to where you came from.
You dirty Jew, go back to Israel. We don't
Right.
want you there.
That is a
Now
great story.
Now they're told to F off and get out of Israel. You dirty European, go back to Europe.
So where should they go? Back to build bricks for the Pharaoh?
And then they told that when they go back to Europe to F off and get out of Europe because Europe's no longer theirs either. And I use this example because this is what's happening in South Africa, dude. Like South Africans that have been here,
And that's what I'm talking about.
South Africans that have been here since 17 whatever,
Or 1652.
you know, they're told F off and get out of here, you stupid European colonizer, and go back to where you came from.
And ironically, they're being told that by people who've only been here for 1,200, 1,600 years themselves.
You know, and it's like it's curious, man.
No, it's frightening. And so back to the Israel thing very quickly here. You know, okay, let's accept that premise that those of European origin, the Jews, Ashkenazi, go back to Europe. Not that they could, but so there'll still be Jews there because there were Jews there when the Balfour Declaration was made. Israel had Jews. They were living there. They lived there in the Ottomans. They've been there all along, just like the Christians.
Well, interestingly enough, you know, it's like they talk about saying, well, free Israel, it should be Palestine. You know, there is a Palestinian state right now. Jordan.
Yeah, majority of the
60%.
population, yeah.
60% Palestinian.
Yeah.
And you know that when the original Israel was given to the Israelis, what we now call the Israelis, when it was Palestine, you know, it was like a shedload bigger, right?
Yeah.
And the natives, they weren't natives. They were actually in the country. The Arabs next door actually invaded
And occupied land.
and occupied the land because they were
Hence
like,
we had Transjordan, including Judea.
correct. And they all that land actually was ceded to Jordan to keep them happy. Because interesting fact is that when it was Palestine, no one wanted to live there because it's an arid waste. There's nothing there. It's a shithole.
Well, I mean, well, we could say the same thing about many parts of South Africa. It's been turned into something glorious, and now people want it who had no.
Orania is a really good example, and so we could use that as an example. Orania in the Northern Cape was originally given to those Afrikaans settlers because it was a bankrupt municipality with a population of 0.
They purchased it.
Well, originally the actual municipality, because remember there's a municipality, there's land, and then there's a municipality. It actually falls under a municipality. And the municipality itself was given to them because it was a bankrupt municipality with a population of no one. And so there was like, what do you want us to do with it? There's like a municipal boundary. It's dead. Like, what do we do? Do we close it or... Anyway, the Afrikaners said, well, we'll buy the land and we'll take over the municipality and we'll call it Orania. And
which is all perfectly legal under South African law.
And they did, and no one gave a flying monkeys until they turned it from a desert into a place with vegetation.
And now they envy, and with solar power and with water
solar
purification.
batteries, and they've got manufacturing there now. They've got all sorts of manufacturing.
But I hear that the Iranians, they abuse black laborers. That's what I've been told by a Nigerian / UK journalist in a wheelchair who was afraid to go there because he's black.
You know what's actually really interesting about that?
Yes.
That's that story. Ramon and I went to Orania. We did.
I remember.
We filmed it. What no one knows is that we were there at the exact same time as him. We met him.
That I didn't know.
We met him.
How he must have been terrified of you.
No, he was actually at a table being treated very well by the Oranians because
Probably like
we were
royalty.
there. We were there and we watched it. And Ramon and I actually made a joke with each other. We're like, oh, look, the only black guy in Orania. I hate to tell you, he wasn't. There were actually quite a few. But what I will tell you is that, as I'm sure you know, because I think you've been to Orania, Orania refuses to employ black individuals, not because they're racist, but because they say that they want to imbibe the Afrikaner spirit, which is anything that gets made, I must make myself.
Mm-hmm.
I can't employ another to do the work for me.
It's like the proudly South African logo for manufactured goods. Everything's made in South Africa. It's the same thing. They want everything done by their own folks.
Yes. And they're like, if you live in Orania, you're a member of Orania, you must build your own home. You want to come live here? Build your own home. You want to work here? Build your own stuff. You want to eat here? Farm your own food. That's the whole point. And so actually, if you look at the Oranian logo, you'll notice there's a guy rolling up his sleeves because he has to get out and do work.
Self-bestir.
So the idea that they're abusing black laborers is
ludicrous.
It's impossible.
Right. It's not even possible. But you see this nonsense all the time, which is comical. If you make a video and you're a person of color about Orania, you get 1 million views. If you tell the truth about Orania, you get 10,000 views.
Yeah, but, we talked about that yesterday, right, at your meet and greet. And unfortunately, there are certain things that people want to see, and there are certain videos that people don't. It's curious. It's like if I do a video on Vladimir Putin, dude, I'll get like 5,000 views. No one wants to see it.
Yeah.
I do a video on Julius Malema, 100,000 views, no worries.
Yeah.
And
speaking of which, I did one this morning. I haven't published yet.
But it's like, and also you got to be careful on what you say about that clown. Because if you say, you know what, Julius went to school somewhere and he gave a speech, and the speech was actually really good. I know he's a communist and all, but it was a good speech. And occasionally, as I say, a broken clock is right
Twice a day.
Twice a day. So occasionally, and I do say this even on my pod, like on Morning Shot, I say sometimes some of the things he says is actually
EFF opposed the VAT increase.
Right.
The motivation we can question, but they did.
And all the speeches that went around it, okay, that's completely different. Yes, they were balmy and they wanted to do an apartheid tax and a wealth tax and a what. But they didn't want VAT, neither did the rest of us. But if I do a video that's like, Juju's right, 100 views.
You'll get rubbish too.
Get rubbish for it. 200 views, that's it.
No, people don't want people say they want objectivity and good news stories, but they really don't.
No.
Yeah. So the thing I was mentioning earlier was something I've noticed over the years. Now, there are a few people who threw this term out 10, 15 years ago about the so-called white genocide. And what I see is it's mostly the press or politicians who use this term. I don't see many reputable people, particularly centrist or people center-right, who actually repeat this phrase. They've accused AfriForum of using it, which is a lie. That's not true. They haven't used it. And they've accused many people of using it. But every time they use it, I just make fun of them because, you're the ones talking about it. No one else is talking. Everyone's suffering badly in this country. Crime is off the charts. 80-some murders per day. And most of the people murdered every day aren't black folks because that's the majority of the population, 80%. But the time I see this term, it's just, to me, it's just an intentional effort to distort what's going on by throwing something out there and then trying to rubbish anytime somebody makes a complaint about a farm murder or something like that.
Look, I have big issues with the way that certain things are framed in South Africa, and I know I'll probably be rubbished about this in my own comment section, but I have massive issues in the way that certain things get framed here. A good example is the Trump refugee program. I'm not being funny, dude. South Africans don't need refugee status. It's not like South Africans haven't been leaving the country in large numbers to Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada,
US.
for 30 years. We don't need refugee status. It's not like we're coming from Nigeria where if they have a civil war, it's the only way you're getting out. Right? It's like, dude, we've been leaving in large numbers for a long time through all sorts of reasons. Some people because of ancestry and all sorts. What the freak do we need refugee status for? That's okay, just my personal status. And I understand why Donald's doing it.
You're gonna get rubbish for that.
Have no doubt. But I also think it's complete, the whole notion is just complete horse rubbish. Well, what do we need it for? It's not like people haven't been leaving. It's not like most people know someone somewhere where their entire family's moved.
Yeah, I know people, their kids live in the Netherlands, live in New Zealand, live in Australia. Yeah,
All over the world. All over the world. Like, so it's not like they haven't been leaving. It's not like they don't live everywhere. Freaking, even the black individuals are living somewhere. Like,
and colored South Africans have left too.
so I think the whole thing is a political stunt by Trump, and many of the political elites are too stupid to understand why he's done it and how he's done it, and
They're not getting his messaging.
and the pressure that it puts them under. Because if you live in a state where you start saying, well, I've had to accept your refugees because you're just that horrible, that's reputationally, that's terrible. And so it's the best form of reputational tarnish. Like you can't hold yourself out to be a government of integrity when we're taking your refugees. Like you've got no right to talk. So, but do us South Africans really need refugee status? I mean, get lost, man. Like I'm not in that camp. I expect I'm going to get rubbish to my comment section, but I'm just not in that camp.
Remember, it's Morning Shot, Byron, not Chris. When you post your comments on this video.
Yeah, Chris loves this thing because
No, I don't love this thing. I've told people.
He's riding high on this. Chris Wyatt, yeah,
No.
fake news. Anyway, coming back to the genocide thing, right?
Yeah.
That white genocide thing is also, it's one of those terms because we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
I'm sure, but define genocide.
Well, there
Because-
is a legal definition for it.
And it's like, I get that, but you see, there's also, there's
subjectivity that goes into it.
there's so much nuance that goes into the words. So I use the example of the Jews in the Middle Ages. There were numerous attempts to commit genocide against the Jews in the Middle Ages.
Not just in the Middle Ages, but in the 19th and 20th century in Belarus and in Russia and Ukraine.
Not all of it was at the end of a gun.
No. Yeah.
You know, like a lot of the Islamic nations have done this throughout histories. Their way of committing genocide against Jewish individuals is the mass conversion to Islam,
Correct.
because then Jewishness is gone.
Correct.
And the people aren't dead. They became Muslims.
Well, those who didn't convert were dead because they were slaughtered. Those who converted survived.
100%. But those that did convert, and in many instances people did, became Muslim. And so you then would look at those populations, say today, and you'd go, well, where's the Jewish population? It's gone. It doesn't exist. Oh, wait, look, you could then make an allegation that they genocided the people, the Jewish people, because
the purpose of genocide is to extinguish a people.
correct, and that people are gone. But the physical people are still alive.
Mm-hmm.
They still exist.
It doesn't involve slaughtering people in ovens. It can,
It can't.
but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, right?
That's why I talk about the cultural genocide of the Afrikaans language.
Correct. And so if you were then to say, okay, well, there's the white genocide of, say, Afrikaners, and you go, well, Bella Act is to get rid of the language, and is to get rid of this, and to get rid of that, and to get rid of the culture, and what. You could logically argue that you are genociding Afrikaners because, let's say, as an example, that all Afrikaners had to, I don't know, let's say they all got kicked out and moved to America.
Mm.
That would be a genocide of Afrikaners.
Because they would no longer exist in their homeland.
And they would no longer be Afrikaners, they'd be Americans. Within 2 generations, they'd all be speaking English. Nobody would ever understand Afrikaans ever again, and they wouldn't even remember where they came from.
Argentina, Pedro de Vos. They're not Afrikaners.
You know what I mean? So you could very legitimately say at that point that you had genocided the Afrikaners. Does that mean the wholesale death of Afrikaners? No. but the notion of the people of Afrikaners would
And Afrikaner culture goes away. So that's what I've talked about as a cultural genocide. I mean, that's but and I've that's why I think it's an important distinction what we're talking about, because the media and politicians will try to rubbish and say, oh, like only one farm murder, or only white people are not under no greater pressure than black South Africans. Everyone's under pressure in this country, but there's a clear and present danger to Afrikaans. I mean, we take Stellenbosch. The land was donated on the proviso that the medium of instruction in perpetuity would be Afrikaans. And we've seen the effort to distinguish Afrikaans at the premier Afrikaans university. That's just one example. We can go on and on, but it's unfortunate because it's a misplaced hatred for a language that is spoken primarily by people of color.
Yes, but you see to a large degree, and this is where I think it would be very difficult for them to say that to a degree they don't want to see Afrikaner culture. I've never heard a ANC politician saying they respect Afrikaans culture.
I think I heard Zuma say it when he first came in office.
Yeah, maybe.
Because he reached out to the Afrikaans community, but then everything went,
in typical fashion, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've never actually seen an ANC politician say that they really respect Afrikaans culture. I think that very full well. In fact, Ramaphosa quite often speaks about what I like to call the making the nation beige. We're all become the same. We're the South African nation of, I don't know, nothing.
It's like the Matrix movies. As you watch each movie, people became browner and browner. If you're a white dude,
but it's very curious because you find this in Britain too now, right? So you can't be English, you must be British. What is?
Well, there's a difference.
There is a difference.
There's Welsh, there's Cornish, there's English, there's Scots, there's Irish.
That's correct. There's even people. There's even the Yorkies, the people in.
Oh, you break it down even further, yeah.
The people in Yorkshire are very different from.
The Midlands is very different from, say, London or Cornwall. Yeah.
Right, and so but they all want everybody to be this like beige culture or British, and then you go, okay, well, what does that culture mean? And it's like, well, you could say it was a white people. Nah, you've got all these mixing pot of diversity.
Oh, because
they're all British.
You have Nigerians who are UK nationals. They carry a British passport, but
they're British,
but they're not English, unless they have an English parent.
And they don't.
So
but they're British. And so they want everybody to be this beige thing of British.
Well, see, that works for America, but it doesn't work for the UK. It doesn't work for Germany. It doesn't work for Denmark.
And to a degree, it doesn't work for South Africa because we've been here that long, So it becomes problematic in that perspective. But if you see Ramaphosa, he's like, well, we must all become South African. We must, rainbow nation, this beigeness. And that works just fine until you realize that the guy next door to you, who might not be white, he might be a black guy and an EFF supporter, he doesn't want that beigeness. He actually wants black. He wants to be black, and he wants to be not just black, he wants to be a Afro-nationalist supremacist. He wants to be supreme as a black man in Africa, and he doesn't want that beigeness. He wants to be culturally dominant and supreme. And we see that. Coming back to your lady in the Western Cape that's told, why don't you piss off and go to America and get out the country and go back to where you came from? And those aren't good actors. No. So the idea of this beigeness occurs, but yeah, it's very curious. You then get the guy that gets killed, the white farmer, and that does happen. Black farmers get killed too.
And 100%. Indians and coloreds, yep. And
they all get killed, but you're asked to ignore the white guy because it carries a political connotation, apparently. And the political connotation is one of, actual physical genocide, not cultural genocide, physical genocide. And because we don't want there to be a distinction between cultural genocide, because we can't deny that.
No, you can't. It's there. It's ever present. I mean, renaming Pretoria Shwane is ludicrous. There was no mythical Setswana king that was there. There was no settlement there. When the Voortrekkers established Pretoria, named after Andries Pretorius. At Nelspruit, there was no formal establishment or permanent settlement there when the Afrikaners or Voortrekkers of that stage in the 19th century established Nelspruit. There's nothing wrong with naming something after someone who's African or Xhosa or Zulu or Tswana, but why don't you build that?
Yeah, but we've seen this right around the country, dude, like everywhere. Everywhere's been renamed. And you would then say, okay, well, what's the purpose of it? And they'll say decolonization. Well, decolonization is basically destroying any form of cultural heritage or link that you, as an Afrikaner, might have with the land or the place that you built. And so you would say, okay, well, we're trying to restore the dignity of the black people. And you're like, okay, but in the process, you're killing that guy's track.
But apparently that's okay.
Of course. And when he said, hang on, you're destroying my history and you're genociding my history, it's like, no, that's not real, because you didn't.
We're just righting historical wrongs.
We're righting historical wrongs because you didn't die. Ergo, we didn't put you in a gas chamber, so the genocide isn't. It's all playing on.
It's wordplay.
It's wordplay.
And it's politics, and it's being used to divide the society. And that's the distinction I see this time from my previous trips here over the many years, going back close to 30 years coming here. I see a palpable tension in the air from people. And it's not just white folks. I see some black folks are very reserved and concerned about what's happening as well. And it's disheartening, because this could be the powerhouse engine of Africa and be a major world player. We've got Amanda Koza from News 24 pretending that Sir Ramaphosa is a global actor by, making a phone call to Zelensky and one to Putin the same day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just absolutely ludicrous. He outmaneuvered Trump. Spare me, outmaneuvered Trump.
He said that he was the most influential political leader in the world because he spoke to 3 political leaders in the same day.
I guess that's common core mathematics. I mean, it's ludicrous. South Africa, look, I love South Africa, but it's not a player on the world stage. It's not. And
No.
they've squandered what goodwill they've had here, and the world is finally waking up. And it's at the moment, it's because Trump has shown a light on it, but he's not even trying. Trump is busy. So you got Gaza, you got Ukraine, you got reciprocal tariffs, you've got the Democrats, you've got Doge. Way down here is South Africa.
Yeah. But you see, South Africa is very important to South Africa, but it's not.
Of course.
But South Africa isn't important to everyone else. And this appears to be something that we forget. And I've made the actual statement on my pod a few times, and that is, if you took all the economies in Africa and you added their GDP together, it's roughly around the economy of California.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So it's like Africa as a whole as a continent, just
Smaller than California.
It's smaller than so it's just not that important.
It's not, and that's what explains a lot of the neglect why people. But I don't know if you saw what Juju said yesterday in Northwest Province. He said that Trump is an enemy of Africa and he's illiterate. Trump is a graduate of the Wharton Business School, the most prestigious business school on the planet, and an enemy of Africa.
But did he get a D in woodwork?
I don't think he did. I didn't either. I didn't.
And that's why he's illiterate.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, look, it's the problem is he's playing for an audience, and it's a dwindling audience. The EFF is on vapors, and they don't realize it, or maybe they do realize it.
No, I think he very much does, and he keeps trying to play the old playbooks in the hope that it will revitalize his political career, but it's not working.
No.
I mean, to a large degree, it's not even working with the MK party. The MK party gets a couple of victories here and there, mainly because they're infighting with the GNU guys, and they're all like, "This shows we're growing." So wait till Zuma's passed on to the next life.
Yeah, it's a vanity project.
Let's see what happens.
It's a vanity project. Both of those parties, just like Tony Patton, the Good for Nothing party, that's another vanity project.
But it's
Both
just
vanity project.
It's destined to go that way. You take Bosa and you fire Musi.
It's
dead.
gone.
You take
well, look at Coke without Terra Lakota. I mean, it's it's gone.
It's non-existent. You take the good party and you fire Patricia DeLuc. It's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, who else is there? You're gonna get Brandon?
Brad Herron.
Who the hell is he? Like no one.
Yeah, no, it's the thing. There are, I was talking earlier with Retief Odendahl, and we're talking about the effort to change the legislation or change the constitution so that you could have a threshold for representation of parliament. Because the Germans had it. The Germans, the lesson they learned from the 1930s when the Nazis took over is that allowing anyone to get into parliament, regardless of how few votes they have, can be disastrous. It becomes a cacophony of voices, and you don't get a major party in charge. So they came up with post-World War II, 5% threshold. So I think you know that already. But if you don't have 5%, you don't get a seat. And this has have devastating impacts on some parties. The smaller parties like the Free Democrats, the FDP, they are a liberal party traditionally. They're called the conservatives, but they're not really conservative. They're liberal. They didn't hit the 5% threshold in the most recent election, so they're out. They will have no members in parliament, zero.
And To be honest, I kind of support that to a large degree. I think it is, we have to be careful how we do it, but I do kind of support that. And it's interesting that if you actually speak to a lot of even Black South Africans, right, and I do speak to a lot of them, and it's very curious that many of them actually like the American system of Democrats versus Republicans, and a lot of them actually decry and say we have too many political parties in South Africa.
It's a common refrain.
You know,
By all South Africans.
it's a common thing, and actually, a lot of them say to you, "We wish it was just DA and ANC because at least then we could make a decision. When the ANC work, we vote for them. When they don't work to vote for the DA, and we're done." They're like, but a lot of them say that the actual number of political parties is too complicated. They say we don't know what any of these stand for. There's confusion. This is this guy's personality, and it's true. Action SA, fire home and Mashaba. Who's left in the body?
Electoral.
He's not going to get voted for by anyone. Who's voting on mass for Electoral?
Nobody. You know, it's. Well, I mean, you could argue that Action SA is also a vanity project, but I also argue that Action SA is largely a bumhurt former DA party.
Well, and there's a joke, there's a meme that goes around now. I'm sure you've seen it, where it basically says, yes, all the political parties and they're thinking about it. So
What's keeping them up at night?
what's keeping them up at night?
So
Yeah,
I reposted that.
yeah. So it's like, you know, John's like, oh, you know, unemployment, and Cyril's like, oh, you know, these Afrikaners.
EFF is Orania.
Or EFS like Orania, and then it's like Herman Mashaba, the DA. It's like, you know, it's like, did you ever see that interview? He was on SABC and they said to him, so why did you vote for why'd you vote for the budget? It's a true story. So he was on the SABC and they said, why'd you vote for the budget? You know, you shouldn't have done this. And he said, every answer he gave is the DA were trying to collapse the country and we were here to save the country.
Obsessed with the DA.
And even even the presenter was like, I'm not asking you about the DA.
Right. Asking you why
I'm asking you why you voted for it. And he said, well, the DA. Even the presenter rolled his eyes and he was like,
stuck in the groove.
But you know, it's like I called it. We've interviewed Herman, between myself and Ramon, we interviewed Herman nearly 3-4 times. I interviewed Herman myself twice. And I commonly refer to individuals and I often say, Herman's the one interview I've ever done with a politician where I actually got bored of my own interview. And if you actually go back and watch it, you'll stop playing with my phone like I'm browsing through my emails. I legitimately got bored. And the reason for it is, didn't matter what I asked him, it was the asshole. I actually asked him at one point in time, like, what would you do with gun policy? Would you relax it? Would you? And he gave me some answer about the DA and supporting families and something. And I was like, Herman, let me help you out here.
You're not in the DA anymore.
You know, but I was also like, let me help you out here. Are you going to relax the Firearms Control Act? Or are you going to strengthen it? Are you going to allow more people to own guns? Or are you going to own less? I said, that's all I want to know. Oh, but the DA. And I was like, dude, I actually did a reaction video to my interview during which I said, this guy's politics, I just hate the DA.
Yeah.
I said,
sure.
You must read that guy on X. Yes, he's racist.
Oh no, I've seen him on X. That's why. I mean, I think he's had an accident where he's been replaced by aliens. I mean, it doesn't make sense. He even called Ronaldo racist recently. You know,
dude, every day it's like your former colonies. You should see what they came under. You should see some of the things he said to D. McPherson. Yes, racism.
No, it's not, because only white people can commit racism.
Dude, that guy's tweets are more spicy than Juju's.
Yeah, I know. I've seen them. Yeah, I know something's really going on with Herman Mashaba. I have no idea what it is, but yeah. Anyway, I did a video recently when I welcomed John Steenhuisen, Herman Mashaba, and Gabe McKenzie to the ANC. His hell got hoodwinked.
Anyway, looking at the time, I think actually this video is probably overrunning a bit, and so what I will say is thank you so much for coming to my office.
It's my pleasure.
We're going to go celebrate Ronaldo's birthday with him later tonight. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it should be all right.
By the time this video goes out, Ronaldo will be a year older. Wish him happy birthday on his streams anytime.
Yeah, happy birthday to Ronaldo.
Happy birthday, Ronaldo. Not that you're watching.
He might.
He might be.
Anyway, But it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me by, Byron. It's always a good thing. I mean, we do our conversation distance, but it's always nice when we get a chance to come here. And last time I recorded for my program, we're recording for your program this time. So it's always nice to be able to talk to someone whose head isn't up their ass. Because I talk to too many of those people.
I think we both do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just the nature of what we do. Anyway, thanks so much for coming to see me at my office, and everybody, until Monday.